Hello again, everybody. Welcome back in. NFL offseason is in full swing. We're kind of in the middle of free agency and the draft, kind of transitioning out of FAs and into the draft. But tonight will be all FA focused. Austin's back with us as always. Shane is back with us as always, and you're with us. So all of you watching, thank you. Maybe some of you for the first time. We're going to do three things tonight. Okay, we're going to start with the Patriots and hit them pretty hard because Shane's a Patriots fan for about 10 minutes. Then we'll segue right over to the Vikings because Austin is a Vikings fan. We'll hit them hard for about 10 minutes. And then we're going to spend the last probably third to half of the show on the top free agents at every position. So, like the top three highest paid guys, we're just going to rapid fire go through them. And we'll explain more about that in just a second. Shane, I have great weather down here. Beautiful. Springtime is everywhere. We went from the white blooms to the red blooms, and now we're catching some pinks and purples. Weather report from your side of the world, man.
So it's speaking of bloom, so we got most of the snow melt, but then as is popular in the North Country up until about, I don't know, May 15th or so, snow the last 2 days. Just a light sprinkle. Just to remind you that you live above the Mason-Dixon line and this is what you agreed to. So
All right, Shane. Thank you for the weather update. I know. Does it bother you? I mean, I know you're used to it. At what point are you like, "Hey, I'm done with this. It is time for a weather change here"?
uh I mean, the thing for me, I've always been of this belief in weather is that I don't care what happens. I just want it to be a weather event that causes some change. So, like if it's a downpour, I'm okay with that. If it's a sprinkler rain, I think that's a wasted weather event. If
Okay.
I get snow
Okay.
and it's a amount of snow where you could do something with it, then I'm perfectly okay with that. So where I live, that pretty much is agreed upon. I will say, being someone that loves baseball and played baseball in high school and to have to play indoors for, practice at least until you were well into your season and to have to shovel snow to make sure you could play like your first game, that would have been enjoyable, I think, to play a little bit uh, in the southern part of the U.S. for sure.
Yeah, not everybody has that experience. So, all right, interesting. Especially interested about the change thing. You want it to fully commit, right? Let's not halfway do this weather, right?
Exactly, exactly. I
Okay.
mean, that's uh, for me, it's just like if it's going to affect your day, then let's affect something.
Okay.
Like if I go outside and it's just sprinkling rain, that's just annoying. You get cold, you get wet. It doesn't, but it's not enough to make you not do whatever you're doing. You just have to deal with it. I want like if it's going to rain, let's pour. If it's going to snow, then it's going to be a couple inches, things like that.
Well, let me add in a big old pun, Shane. Your New England Patriots are raining money. Okay, so we're going to talk about them for about 8 to 10 minutes here. I've only got the biggest deals on the board. We're not going to go through every deal. I'll rattle these off. There was even another signing today, and then Shane, if you've got another smaller signing or two that you think was actually going to be pretty important as the season plays out, by all means, trot that out to us as well. Milton Williams gets a 4 year, $104 million deal, defensive tackle from the Eagles, well documented. Carlton Davis, also a lot of attention on that, cornerback, cover corner, coming over from Detroit, 3 years, $54 million. Harold Landry, 3 year, $44 million total deal there. And Robert Spillane, linebacker from the Raiders, 3 years, $33 million. Morgan Moses comes in at tackle, 3 years, $24 million, and a smaller deal with Matt Collins, 2 years, $8.4 million. Shane, I want to ask you first, what's out of this whole board here, or anything that the Patriots have done? What's your favorite kind of deal or move here?
I think for me, it's the Robert Spillane deal. I
Okay.
think if you're gonna start and put somebody in, I think both linebacker moves were good. They're pulling in guys that have already played for Vrabel, so I think it builds into that defense right away. There's a common knowledge, there's a common understanding of what Vrabel's looking for, not just probably similar play calling. Um, I mean, in all honesty, there's an awful lot to like about what the Patriots have done free agent wise. Um, I don't think any of them were really bad gets.
Okay.
The ones the money totals for some of them, especially like a Milton Williams, I think that's a high overpay, but somebody else was going to give him that money after the Super Bowl that he had, and having his name out there and having Philadelphia Eagles attached to it. He was going to get money somewhere. And like you said, Ben, with the Patriots having as much money as they do right now, um, you know, they chose to spend it that way. I probably would have looked to make a better deal and get another extra player. It probably could have helped you down the road. But if you're a Patriots fan, I think they've at least tried to go after every weakness that somebody mentions to them. Mac Hollins isn't really a wide receiver one, but I think he's going to help the group. And I think what they haven't signed in free agency gives you a pretty good indication of what they're going to go for in the draft. And I think the Bradbury pickup right here uh, today tells you that offensive line is probably not going to be their first pick. And I think the Travis Hunter watch might have started officially.
How excited would you be if they were able to pick up Travis Hunter as opposed to? I mean, there's a lot of good players sitting right up there at the top, but if you could get Travis, how excited would you personally be on that?
I mean, for me, I still think the greatest weakness is the wide receiver position, and I don't think Travis Hunter in the NFL, I don't think that's his strongest position. But I think if you add somebody with his talent level to the defensive backfield for the Patriots, I think that makes him really tough. I think it's going to help him. I think if you want to use him as like a side piece every once in a while as an offensive weapon, I think you can. But um, I think in years past where special teams were allowed to like fully play, I think getting him would have really helped the special teams group because he does have uh, great ball skills and he'd be an excellent return man. With the way that returns are done now, I think that kind of evaporates that skill set for a lot of guys. Um, but I think now it's going to become the watch list because I think teams are going to start playing around and see where they can go. Um, and now it makes it a little bit more of an easy move for the Patriots, where I thought they were going to go offensive line early. I think with the signings they last made, they're probably going to push it back.
Shane, I'll come back to you in a minute because it is your team. Austin, I'm going to talk to you for a second here. A lot we could talk about, but I'll let you go in any direction you want to go here on what we're seeing on the board here on the Patriots and what they've done so far in free agency.
Yeah, I think Spillane probably is my favorite of the signings. I think he's a really quality player, but I also really like the Carlton Davis signing. I think he is going to kind of solidify this DB room where, see, I kind of differ from Shane in the fact that I believe Travis Hunter can be a very quality receiver in the league. I think he can do both receiver and corner at a high level. And now that you've got Carlton Davis, you can allow him to focus on becoming the best receiver he can for this offense and be the cornerback three on this team, which I think is really big. And that's, again, a big if he falls, but he's getting mocked there a lot. In fact, on our mock last night, I had the Patriots and I took him at 4.
It did.
Uh, so it's becoming a very real possibility, and I really love the Carlton Davis signing for that fact. Um, Milton Williams looks like a really big overpay when you kind of first see it, but when you look at the season he had last year, he earned himself a really nice check. And when you have the most money in free agency, why not make sure you're going to get the guy? Because it takes a little bit of coaxing. It didn't used to back when Brady and Belichick were there. But these days, it's a little more difficult to get a free agent to come to New England, I think, than it used to be. Everybody wants to go down and play for Miami these days. A nice warm weather spot if they can. But yeah, you've got the money, spend it. Williams had a great year. He's a pass rush specialist from the interior, which just wreaks havoc. So many offensive line and quarterbacks don't necessarily know what to do when you can get pressure up the middle, Milton Williams can get after.
Austin, I'll get back to you in a second on the Viking side of things when we get to that segment. Shane, I do want to stick with you here on the Patriots for a minute. Let's go negative for just a second, Shane. Even if you're all okay with these deals, is there anything that you didn't like or anything that surprised you? Or is there just, hey, another move you would rather have seen them do, knowing what free agents were out there?
I mean, one I kind of mentioned on here, and I definitely mentioned, with our somewhat frequent guest, Yusuf. Uh, Cooper Cup was one that I would have really liked to have been
Yeah.
involved in, and the name was mentioned. I mean, I'm not surprised he went to Eastern Washington, so for him to sign in Seattle, I think there's a familiarity for him to like that. But like I said, I still would have liked the Patriots to gone in on or put a little bit more of a pressure on a wide receiver. Um, I think, like Austin said, for me, it's not that I don't think that he can't be a quality wide receiver. I just think his skill set as a defensive back does more for the Patriots. That's what it is. Because I still think the Patriots have always needed a big wide receiver, and they've done a terrible job of drafting anyone that fills that position. They've been okay with filling in those, um, you know, scat back slash, wide
Right.
receiver two type guys that are going to get a ton of catches in their offense, but they normally need a bigger guy to run around for them. I agree. Like I said, I think that it's an overpay, but it's a certainly justified overpay for Williams. Um, I think Austin hit out of the park. The Davis deal really shows exactly what Vrabel's doing. He is building the entire defense right up the middle. Pass rush from interior, two solid linebackers, safeties, being able to move corners. He's going to try to build that defense so that it's going to be hard for people to find spots. Um, yeah, like I said, I mean, as a Patriots fan, for what they've done in the past, I don't know how you can be upset with what they did with this money. You're not always going to have it, as Austin said, so you might as well spend it. And I don't think there's anyone that's on this list that, if you look back, all saying if there's not a ton of injuries this year, that these guys aren't going to play at least up to a level where you're like, okay, I mean, maybe he should have got a little bit less, but he's way better than what we played with last year. And I think the Patriots had a ton of holes last year. So this group coming in is at least going to be an upgrade at every single position that they're putting somebody in.
We're going to revisit the Patriots here in about 3 or 4 weeks because we'll do another uh, Patriots player grades and a 3 round mock draft. So we'll come back to a little bit of this in 3 or 4 weeks. Let's switch gears now and go to the Minnesota Vikings, who are Austin's team. He is not only somebody who studies them a lot, but he actively roots for them as well. So, Austin, I'm going to start the same thing with you. A lot of things to look at here, but what's something that you really did like that you were like, yes, really excited we did that?
Well, I think the most important thing is re-signing Byron Murphy. He is the only quality, like true quality player in the secondary. Obviously, we bring back Harrison Smith, who's a Hall of Famer, but at this point, he is, I don't even know if scheme dependent is the right word, role dependent, maybe. He has a few things he can still do well, but Byron Murphy was the only person who, and Cam Bynum was fine, but I think he was a tier under Byron Murphy in terms of skill level and what he provided. So I knew we were gonna have to not keep one of those and hopefully get the other one to resign. And I'm glad it ended up that the way that it did, with Bynum leaving and Murphy staying. But and then you immediately have to go to the trenches here. Both sides
Okay.
of the trenches, which is where most of the issues were in this Vikings team.
Yeah.
He signed probably the second best guard who seemed available in Will Fries, who I think he was like a seventh round pick when he came out, but has really developed into a quality player. Suffered a broken limb last season and only played maybe about a third of the year, but was really solid when he was playing. And then the center from the Colts as well comes over, Ryan Kelly, who for a while was looking like he was going to be one of the best centers in football. Never quite reached that level, but is a quality center indeed. So very happy with those two guys. And then when you look at the other side of the ball on defense, we needed some beef up the middle. Jonathan Allen, not the player he once was. He's 30 years old now, does not quite hold up against the run like he used to, but is still very talented and has some juice left. He's not like completely washed up. He's just gone from the first round fantastic talent that he was to a more average defensive tackle, maybe slightly above. But Javon Hargrave is one of my favorite signings. The deal is pretty good. I wish it was more than
Yeah,
2 years, but
right.
uh, I mean, getting a player like him to kind of anchor this defense up front and be a leader. I've heard really good things about Javon Hargrave and kind of his attitude and what he brings. So I'm really excited about that. The rest of the signings, fine. Jordan Mason was a trade. Great to have him come back up. Aaron Jones, who re-signed a 2-year deal. Aaron Jones played fine for us last year, but it was way too many reps. He has a history of injury, and we got pretty lucky with how healthy he stayed, even though he did miss some time, which is kind of what you have to expect from a running back these days. But I wouldn't expect that quite level of health again. So it's good having Mason come in to be a running back too. And the last one you have on the board is Isaiah Rogers, who I think is a really solid add. He is a quality corner who can play on the outside, which I think is very important. The Vikings need guys who can hold up in man-to-man coverage on the outside. It's a skill set that is coveted in this defense. And any Brian Flores defense, he needs those kind of guys who can do that. He doesn't do a whole lot of things well, Isaiah Rogers doesn't, but that's one thing he does very well. Um, so 2 years, $15 million is a pretty good contract. I'm happy with it. Overall, I'd give this kind of off season or the free agency period probably an A. I don't think it's quite an A plus grade, but it is fantastic. Easily one of the top three free agency classes of the year so far.
Yeah, I like a lot of what the Vikings did. And my favorite move was the Byron Murphy re-signing. I mean, re-signings are boring, right? Especially when they're not A-listers, which Murphy isn't. But still, watching Flores' defense last year, and then as we've talked our way through the Vikings roster this offseason, I was like, man, I really hope they bring Murphy back because he's a solid cover guy. And
Mhm.
Minnesota didn't have a whole lot of those. They can do a whole bunch of other crap, but they didn't have a lot of cover guys. So bringing Rogers in too is a nice kind of a backfield there too. I really like that. But keeping Murphy was exciting. Shane, it's not your team, but we've already studied them a little bit this off season. So thoughts here on the Minnesota Vikings? What's something you really did like here?
Well, I think both of you guys hit on it. Brian Murphy re-signing is a great choice. Um, as Austin said, the weakness in the defense this past year was, any real power up the middle defensively. They got great pass rush through blitzes and through, you know, Van Ginkel and some guys they pulled together on the outside that did a great job for him. I think Austin, the last time when we really broke down the Vikings, Flores plays a defense where it's more important that you do the job that you're asked to do than it is that you have, this flush skill set. So, as Austin said, like Isaiah Rogers, I don't think he's a great fit for a lot of other teams. I think he does outstanding work for the Vikings because they're only going to ask him to do what he's good at. They're not going to ask him to do some other things other teams have asked him to do in the past. Harrison Smith, as we said, still great at what he does, not up to the level of what he was before, but that's everybody gets older and you get slower, and that's the way it is. Um, I think the one that's going to really show for them, as we talked about before, the Patriots, they just signed Bradbury. He had his worst season as a Viking last year. And then they bring in Ryan Kelly. And I think having Will Fries, to have two guys that play together, especially at those positions where you're talking center and guard, I think it's going to help them solidify the offensive line and help them continue to build a run game. Uh, and like Austin said, I mean, I think money wise, I think they did great too. There's none of these contracts that are really out there where you're kind of like, I can't believe you paid that much for them. Like Austin mentioned, the one I was surprised that they didn't throw in another year on Hargrave. I don't know if that was his choice, where maybe he only wanted a 2 year prove it, and then let's see if I can get another big contract on the back end after playing for Flores. Um, but as Austin said, I would put it in the B plus A category. I think they fulfilled the needs they need. Um, and like I said, didn't spend outrageous money. There's nobody here that you're going to look back and go, wow, I can't believe we just threw 51 million at somebody, you know. As Austin said, Jonathan Allen isn't the same player he was before, but he's still damn good at what he does. And when you have a great defensive coordinator that's going to be able to take advantage of that, I think he will only help to power that defense up.
Yeah, after the Byron Murphy deal, I then liked the defensive tackle moves because I looked at them in the offseason. I was like, well, they had some lunch pail rotation guys who were in there busting their tails. I get it, but they needed some juice in the middle. They did it not once, but they double dipped and went twice here with Hargrave and Allen, who are both on the plus side of the roster as far as talent goes. So I loved that they went after that and did it aggressively and did it twice. So bringing in some juice, they got it. So hats off to the Vikings. We will do the same thing with the Vikings. 3 or 4 weeks from now, we'll get back to some player grades, sharpen them up a little bit. We'll each have our own grades sitting out here for every one of you to see. We'll do a 3 round mock on them as well, or a 2 round mock. I think they don't. Yeah, it's a first and third round pick for them. Do a 2 round mock, and we'll do that in 3 or 4 weeks. So that's Minnesota. All right, Austin. Final thoughts here. I did want to ask. I didn't ask about the negative side, Austin. Is there anything at all that maybe you would have liked to have seen them also do? I know at a certain point money just runs out, but
Yeah, I do really like the defensive tackles that were brought in. It's such a strong defensive tackle class. I think that is something that could have been addressed with that first
right.
pick, and then but these are two great signings, so I'm not mad about it. And I've really risen on a lot of the corners as of late in this draft. So
Okay.
I would be very happy, and I know you really like Eamon Worry for the
Right.
Vikings, the fit he
Right.
could be. So. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I'm a little bit lower on Eamon Worry, but I still think his fit in Minnesota could be very good. So yeah, that's what I would say. In a perfect world, I would have loved to address corner and safety heavy, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm fine with this. I think we did also sign former third overall pick Jeff Okuda,
Yep.
who has
Yep.
become a complete nothing burger. I saw a funny tweet. Anytime you hear someone's name said as former first round pick, they're not good.
No,
That's if you have to designate
Right.
that, they're probably not that good. So yeah,
It's
especially when
not.
it's former Ohio State defensive back. It's
right.
been a bad run of late.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not current good. It's former hoped to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Eli
Mhm.
Great point.
Apple. It's
Yes.
Jeff Okuda. I remember when these guys used to cover people.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's the Vikings. We're happy with them. We will return to them in 3 or 4 weeks as well. Okay. This is something that I wanted to do. I don't know where I'm gonna put us at tonight, so sorry. I'm gonna run out of space here. I might tuck us in the corner. How about that? There we are. I'm gonna stay there. That's all right. I've got basically, and again, I put this list together on Friday night, so I'm sure there's been a couple of deals that have worked their way up into the upper echelons of money, but that's okay. These are the top money contracts at each position. So we went top three quarterbacks, money wise, top three running backs, et cetera, et cetera. You can call this game like it or lump it, red, yellow, green. I don't care. I've already got my colors up here. So if it's a green, I like the deal. If it's yellow, I was okay with it. And if there's a red one, I got one red one here. That means I had something I don't like about it. We are going to try to rapid fire our way through here. We got about 15 to 20 minutes here. So we're going to try to rapid fire our way through here. Like it, didn't like it. I'll try to post these colors as well as fast as I can. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Okay. We'll try to take them three at a time. I'll just talk to each one of you as we go. Quarterback Sam Darnold, 3 years, $100 million with the Seahawks. Justin Fields with the Jets, 2 years, $14 million. And Daniel Jones with the Colts, 1 year, $14 million. Austin, I'm gonna give you first shot here on the quarterbacks. Just tell us how you feel about each one. If you want to talk about one specifically, by all means, go ahead. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go red for Darnold. I'll go green for I'll go green for Fields and I'm also gonna go green. No, I'll go yellow for Daniel Jones.
Okay. And
So you might think I'm harsh on Darnold, but he to me is a very similar quarterback to Geno. So I just don't understand the move of getting rid of Geno and signing him. I think like if they didn't already have Geno on the roster, I'd be fine with it. I'd probably give it a yellow, but the fact they had Geno, traded him, and then signed the yeah,
yeah, I will say I'm okay with the Sam Darnold thing. I just if this is a two-parter where next year they draft somebody and then they hang on to Darnold for 2 seasons and it's bridging, I like it better. But boy, when you've kind of had 4 or 5 years now of 9-8, 8-9, 10-7s, if you're John and the Seattle Seahawks fans, don't you want to get back to that two Super Bowl level? And I don't really see where this gets you to that, and that's really where I would love to strive to be. So anyway, okay with it, but I didn't love it. Shane, your feeling on these three quarterbacks, and if you want to talk about any one of them, lay it on us.
So as much as Austin said that it might be harsh, I agree with him. I'm red on Sam Darnold for the same reason T said. I think you're putting the same player, but in an offense he hasn't
Yep.
already played in, so I don't get it.
Yep.
I went yellow for Justin Fields, and it's not really because of him. It's just because I have no idea what the Jets are doing. I don't. I don't know the offense is going to be an issue, and I don't think trying to find a quarterback that doesn't know really what he's great at yet is a good ad. Um, for the Colts and Daniel Jones, I went green here because I think Daniel Jones knows that he's not a starter anymore. So I think a 1 year, $14 million deal is not terrible. The Colts have certainly risked a lot more for quarterbacks that have done a lot less. I think Daniel Jones could be a decent backup. Uh, I haven't been high on Anthony Richardson. I think he's a fabulous athlete. I don't think he's a
Yeah.
great NFL quarterback. But if you're going to play him again, then you want somebody that you know you can pull in and is going to push the ball down the field. And hopefully for Daniel Jones, he can cut down on some of the mistakes he made. But I think he was probably one of the safer picks for the Colts for who else they could have brought in.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on to the running backs. Rico Dowdle here for the Panthers comes in at 1 year. Not major running backs sitting here this year, right? So it's tiny money. We'll hit them quick. Rico Dowdle goes to the Panthers for 1 year, $6 million. Najee Harris goes to the Chargers for 1 year, $5 million. And Ty Johnson with the Bills gets a 2 year, $5 million. Shane, I'll let you go first here on the running backs real quick.
So for Rico, I went green. I think he's kind of maxed out what his potential is for what he'll be. For Najee Harris, I went green as well. I think he's going to go. Chargers offense is always going to feed backs, so why not have another quality one in front of you? The one that I went yellow on is Ty Johnson. The Bills continue to bring in similar players that don't necessarily change what they're doing at the position. Um, and I don't think Johnson's I don't see where he really helps the offense or changes the dynamic that they already had in the backfield. So
Yeah, typical move from Buffalo. But Austin, real quick on the running backs here.
Yeah, I'm actually perfectly in line with Shane there. Green, green,
Okay.
yellow. Ty Johnson just doesn't inspire anything in me at all. Rico Dowdle, I can get behind. And the Panthers on paper might have the best
Mm,
backfield in football. Two
yeah.
thousand yard rushers, and then a guy who was a second round running back last year is their current three on their roster. So yeah, on paper it's great, and then when you look at the names. It's Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, and Jonathan Brooks. So it's not that good, but yeah, it's a fine deal.
Yeah, I liked Rico Dowdle coming in as basically, I think, a backup for
Mhm.
Hubbard in
Yes.
Carolina. I think that's a good one too. And if somebody goes down with an injury, you're still okay there. So yeah, I like that. And boy, the money's right. 1 year, $6 million. I mean, I almost wish they could have signed him to a 2 year deal, to be honest. So just to
Yeah.
kind of keep some depth there. All right, bigger names here by far, and the money jumps up a lot here. Wide receivers, Cooper Cup to the Seahawks for 3 years, $45 million. Devontae Adams over to the Rams for 2 years and $44 million. And Darius Slayton to the Bills for 3 years, $36 million. I'm actually going to hit this real quick first. I actually had this deal in red, and then I changed it to yellow. Darius Slayton to the Bills. Kind of similar to what Shane said about the running backs with Buffalo. When the season ended for Buffalo, you didn't need more depth or solidarity at wide receiver. Now, as the season off season went, the need came in, and so you add in Darius Slayton, and I'm fine with Slayton. I like him. I'm fine with the money. I thought somebody else should have signed him for higher money, to be honest. But for Buffalo, you do get a deep speed vertical threat, which is nice. But I'm kind of waiting for them to upgrade this room. They have several different guys to throw to, none of whom is a standout. Darius Slayton is not a standout. He's a fine, decent receiver. So I'm okay with it.
I don't
It just didn't do anything for me.
I don't recall Darius Slayton going to the Bills.
Maybe I've got him going to the wrong team then. So
I think you do. I think he re-signed. Did he not re-sign in New York?
maybe he did. I wish we would have all proofread this before we got live on air. So thank you, Austin. I
As
only sent
far
it to
as
you two
as
days
far as
ago.
I know, he's still a New York Giant.
Okay. So as he's Austin, you brought it up. So you look at it live on air. I'll talk to Shane about the other two wide receiver deals. And we'll talk about it. Shane, how you feeling on Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams, where we try to find out which city Darius Slayton is currently living in?
So for me, I think it Cooper Kupp, I'm happy for him. He goes back to Washington. He started at Eastern Washington. The thing for him is going to be if he stays healthy, it's a great pickup for Seattle. I mean, he still catches the ball. He's going to help that team. A great locker room guy. Uh, but for all the love that the Rams had for him, for them to let him go leads me to believe that he is probably permanently injured. This is going to be, a steep decline because for you to bring in Devontae Adams for almost the exact same money that you let Cooper Kupp sign for without you, um, who has thought of as way less of a better teammate than Cooper Kupp is, I think you had to know something was going to go. I think for the Rams, though, I would greenlight the Devontae Adams. I think you get him out of the New York situation. He has a solid quarterback that can definitely get the ball to him, and Puka Nacua is the number one. So as long as Devontae Adams understands that I can make a lot of money and a lot of catches being the 1A
Yeah.
or number two, then I think he has a great season for him. If he turns into the guy you saw on the receivers, where it's, what are we doing? Who's throwing me the ball? What's going on here? It's going to get pushed out by the Rams pretty quick. Um, as Austin mentioned with Darius Slayton,
Who is a
I
Giant,
mean,
by the way.
as a
He is a
Giant, okay,
giant. Well,
for
good. Then
for
I like the move. I'll green light it.
for the Giant, so I'm gonna go yellow for both. Um, because I think the Giants didn't get anything more by him. I think he plays a middling position for them.
Yeah.
Um, but the other thing that you were going to kind of play off of this, Ben, for on the red side for them. This is the thing that frustrates me most about the Bills. They literally watch one player walk away that they could sign at the same price and then try to sign the Timu copy of that guy to the same contract. It's like what was if it didn't work out for you before, what makes you
Right.
think that the guy that wasn't a great at that job is now going to fill in? Like they're always trying to catch the back person. And I don't think it's been a good fill for them. Um, and I think they didn't do well this offseason either. I think there's a lot of question marks for what the Bills did other than locking up your quarterback.
Well, to the audience watching, and by the way, Austin, thank you for catching. To the audience watching, that's my screw up. There may be more on here. If you see them later on, it's like, hey, that money wasn't right. Let us know in the comments. But now you know what I would have thought had the Bills signed Darius Slayton. I would have been between red and yellow, which they didn't do. So, Austin, how do you feel about these three receiver moves, man?
Yeah, I think I'm in line with Shane here again. Cooper Kupp to me is still a very good player. The contract isn't too expensive, but I'm a little worried about his injury history. And he's kind of their second slot receiver. Like he doesn't spend too much time on the outside these days, and Jackson
Yeah.
Smith and Jigba has mostly spent his time on the outside. I think I prefer moving Jackson Smith and Jigba to the outside. I think he has the skill set to go do that.
Okay.
Cooper Kupp did at one point. I don't know if I trust him to do that anymore. I guess it depends on
I would.
how they
Yeah.
look in camp. Uh, Devontae Adams still fantastic, man. He's lost a few steps, but still gets open. Still very sure-handed and an incredibly intelligent receiver as well. I think him and Stafford will click very well. And then Darius Slayton to the Giants. I like that he stay there. He's a good weapon. I just think the
Yeah.
contract's a lot for a deep threat. Like if this was been a 3-year, $28 million deal, or maybe even 30, I think I might have greenlit it. I just think the money's a little bit too much for me to give it a green.
Fair enough. Moving on to the tight ends here. Jawan Johnson, Saints, 3 years, 30 million. Evan Ingram to the Broncos, 2 years, 23. Luke Farrell to the 49ers, 3 years and $20 million. Obviously not the big names. Austin, I'll let you catch in first here. Smaller money, of course, but how you feeling on these three?
I'll go green for Juwan Johnson. I think that's a pretty good deal. I think he fits exactly what they're kind of looking for in a receiving tight end. Evan Ingram's also a green. This is a big need for the Broncos, and now they
Yeah,
don't have to address it in the first round, although they still could, because Evan Ingram plays more
right.
out wide than actually inline tight end.
They
So you
still
can
can.
absolutely
Yes.
you can absolutely have Colston Loveland slash Tyler Warren and Evan Ingram on the team, and that would be awesome. So definitely still a possibility. And Luke Farrell is a yellow to me. It doesn't move the needle at
Right.
all, and it's a pretty good chunk of money. Not too much, but like, it just doesn't move the needle at all.
All right, Shane, real quick on the tight ends.
Okay, so green again on Johnson. I think for everything Austin mentioned, he does what they're looking for. Green on Evan Ingram. Went from a guy who couldn't catch a football in New York, made a move in Jacksonville, and kind of reimagined himself. I think in a Broncos offense, he's a true weapon. For Luke Farrell, I went red on this for a lot of the reasons that Austin mentioned. I think the money is not right. I think for the player, you could get that somewhere late in the draft. I
Yeah.
think you're already like you have Kittle, so unless the next guy below you does something that Kittle doesn't do, or you have room for something else, I mean, you're telling me that Luke Farrell is worth more to you than Kyle Juszczyk, and you're going to make Juszczyk jump through some hoops to re-sign? I mean, to me, that's
Yeah.
crazy when you're talking about the offense. I would have kept Juszczyk and played him at tight end. Yeah,
Yes.
like you could do other things for that offense. I nothing against Luke Farrell, but the money wise and some of the decisions the 49ers have made this year, um, questionable to say the least. And for that money, you're going to get a red because I think you could have spent it a lot better.
Shane, I'll stay with you on the tackles here. Dan Moore from to the Titans, 4 years, 80 mil. Jalen Moore, the 49ers backup, goes to the Chiefs for 2 years and 30. And Morgan Mogus, of course, we already talked about him to the Patriots, 3 years, 24. So give me your feelings on them real quick.
So I stick pretty tight to where how you are, Ben. Dan Moore, the Titans needed to do something. Um, I think 4 years at 80 is a high price for what they got out of this. As you mentioned, Jalen Moore, a backup. Um, and the Chiefs had two of the better guards and let them find their way to someplace else.
Yeah.
Um, and for the Patriots, I don't absolutely love Morgan Moses, but you had to make a move. So I put him more as a yellow than a green. For the ones that we signed, I thought that was the weaker signing, but I think he's going to fit what they're looking to do, and I don't think he's the final piece. So for 3 years and 24 for what you normally pay for tackles, I don't think that's bad, especially if you look across the board in comparison to the two other guys we have on the board.
Austin, I'm gonna let you do all three tackles, and then I'm gonna let you go through and do all three guards, man. Okay, so hit us with it.
Okay, I'll go yellow for Dan Moore. It is a big contract, but he's probably going to slide in and play left tackle and let their first round tackle from last season. Latham. Is that who it is?
I think it's Latham. I think
Latham
so.
moved to
Yeah.
right tackle, which I do like, but it is a lot of money, so that's why it's a yellow, not a green. Jalen Moore, I actually kind of like a lot. I'm gonna go green on it. I don't know what
Okay.
it is. I think he filled in really well last year when he was called upon, and I think they might be able to kind of keep that ball rolling. And then I'll go yellow on Morgan Moses as well, with Shane for pretty much all the reasons he stated. Guard, I'll go green for Fries. I think it's a lot of money, but this is the biggest need
Yeah.
potentially on the entire team. And they found a guy who was having a lot of success pre-injury. This is banking on him being back healthy, though, if he has any sort of lingering, but it's a broken bone, which it's not like a soft tissue injury, so I feel better about it. Uh, Aaron Banks, I'll go yellow with you there. And then Patrick McCarry. I'm not the biggest Patrick McCarry fan, but that's a pretty good deal for him. So I'll go green.
All right. Fair enough. And we're whizzing through some of these because we are short on time, but I just want to give everybody a feel in the audience again. Where'd the money go? And how do we kind of sort of feel about it? So, Shane, I'm going to let you go through all three of the guards and then all three of these centers as well: Drew Dahlman, Robert Hainsey, and Brian Kelly.
Okay. For Fries, I think Green, just like Austin said, we already talked quite a bit about him between the Vikings and this segment. Um, Banks, I think it's an overpay, but I'd put him in the yellow range as well. And actually, for Makari, I put him yellow as well. I think a lot of the guard choices this year, it's just it's a lot of money for some guys that didn't necessarily perform all the way up to what you're looking for. When we look at centers, I think for the Bears, it's definitely a green for Dahlman. It's something they needed. I think he'll fill in well for there. It's good to have a strong center, especially when you're trying to get your quarterback Williams all the way back up. Rahansi, I went with a yellow. I think it's all going to depend on what you can get out of this Jaguars offense. I think you could plug and play some people. I don't know if paying that money for Hainsey was where the best money was spent. Ryan Kelly, I go green. As Austin had mentioned before, I think the hopes for him were higher, but I think he's definitely a serviceable center. I think having his guard right next to him is going to help the Vikings.
All right. Love it. Austin, on Patrick McCarry, I green lighted him for you. Was that a yellow light from you actually on McCarry?
No, I think it
Okay.
was green.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And again, we're zipping through. Austin, I'll let you hit the centers, and I'll let you roll right into the defensive tackles, man.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go green for Dahlman. I'll go yellow for Hainsey and green for Ryan Kelly. Milton Williams. I'm gonna go green for Milton Williams. John Allen, I will go yellow. And for Wharton, I will go yellow.
All right. I'll talk about Wharton in just a second. Shane, go ahead and give us the defensive tackles and defensive ends, man.
Okay, so just like Austin, I'm going green for Williams. Allen, I'm going yellow. Wharton, I went red, the same as you did, Ben. I just not a pickup I really see for the Panthers. Um, when we're looking at defensive ends, I went yellow for Josh Sweat. I wish I could go green, but Chase Young is an injury waiting to happen, so he's a yellow for me. And then I think it's also a yellow for the Bears as well.
Austin, I'll get right to you here on defensive ends and linebackers. The reason I went red on Wharton, by the way, I really like Tershawn Wharton. All right. I've watched him several years for the Chiefs. I like his attitude, like his work ethic. He's flexible. You don't want to play him at defensive end, but on certain downs and distances, you can move him around. I like all that. But listen, he's been in the league 5 or 6 years now. I forget exactly. But he's been a rotation guy almost his whole career. It's been 400 snaps, 500 snaps, 400, 500, 500. And then just last year, he played 667 snaps, which is just barely just barely over half the amount of snaps that an average defense plays. Average defense usually plays 1,200 snaps. So at no time in his career has he ever been a full-time starter or anything even close, man. So last year was his best year, but he's also playing on a tremendous defense there with Kansas City. And his best showing actually on tape was back in like 22 or 23, where he got some pressure on the quarterback, then he kind of disappeared for a season, then he got back in the rotation the last couple of years. Man, the money's not crazy. 3 years, 45 million. If I was Carolina, I had so many other places I would have loved to put that money than Tershawn Wharton at 3 years, 45. So that's why I red lighted it. Even though they'll be glad to have him, he will contribute. They needed upgrades to stop the run. That's all fine. I just wasn't a fan of the money at all. Have watched him for quite a long time now in detail. Austin, give us the defensive ends and then the linebackers.
Yeah, I'm going green for Josh Sweat, red for Chase Young. Don't like that deal even remotely, and
Okay.
yellow for Deo.
Yellow for Deo. And go ahead and drop us down on the linebackers, man. Unless you got any of the defensive ends here you want to talk about.
I'll just mention with Chase Young, I don't know how he's getting this contract. Like he has not played anywhere remotely this level when he's healthy, and he's never healthy. So I just don't like again, it's former, was it first or second overall draft pick? Like when you have to preface that, it's not
Yeah.
good. Um,
Saints keep doing a lot of things like this. Yes.
yes. Dre Greenlaw, I'll go green. I really like Greenlaw. He's a great player. Spillane, I'm also going to go green. And I'll go green for Barton as well. I really like all three of these signings.
All right. I do. If the Dre Greenlaw, listen, if the Dre Greenlaw thing hits, it could hit huge. I mean, that could be a huge deal. I know coming off an injury, I got it. If that hits, that could hit huge. You said green on Cody Barton as well. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Shane, we're trying to wrap this thing up, man. Give us linebackers and cornerbacks.
So I'm right in line with Austin on all these. Drake Greenlaw, I think if he's healthy, he's really going to change the way that defense can play. They already play well with speed. The one that was maybe surprising me was the Cody Barton move, just because the Titans seem to let everything else go defensively. So to spend some money and bring him in,
Yeah.
questionable to see how they're going to do that. When we're talking defensive backs and the corners, I think we hit on Byron Murphy. He's a green for sure. Great re-signing for them. Uh, Ward, I put as a yellow. I think at sometimes he plays at a level that really is worth it. But I think he's had a decline in a little bit, and it's hard to tell if it's from everything else on the defense or if it's his skills are starting to drop. For Adebo, I put him as a yellow as well. Um, Again, I think it's more to the Giants than it is really him. I think he's earned right around that contract, and I wasn't surprised that he signed it. But from the Giants, again, you're gonna plug and play a player and see what he can do for them. Where I just don't see what they're doing defensively or offensively again this year.
Austin, quite a bit of money went here to the safeties. So give us the cornerbacks and the safeties, man.
I'll go green for Byron Murphy. Kind of already explained that one. I'm a big fan of Travarius Ward. He was really dealing with some stuff out, with losing a child. I think he's getting away from that now with the Colts, joining a pretty solid secondary. I really like that move. And then Adebo's a yellow. A lot of money. I mean, almost the exact same amount I mean, pretty much they were all about the same. And I think he's the
Right.
worst of the three. So it gets a yellow from me. Uh, Bynum, I'll go yellow. Fine player. Love his energy. But $60 million for 4 years is just kind of rich for me. Trevon Merrick, I'm a fan of, but it's got to be a yellow for me as well. And Javon Holland's a green. That's a smash.
All right, Shane, wrap us up here and to the audience again. I apologize. We didn't have more time, but listen, nobody would want to hear us talk 2 hours about all these free agents anyway. So we just wanted to give everybody a quick feel for greens and yellows and reds and stuff. So Shane, wrap us up here on the safeties, man.
Okay, so to wrap it up, I agree with Austin across the board on this. I think Cam Bynum is not a bad player, but I think for that money, it's crazy. Morig, I think, does what he does, but again, 51 million, ridiculous for what you're getting out of that. And I think Holland is a great pickup for the Giants. That's why, like I said, with Austin bringing it up, you look at those corners, you paid each of them 3 years at 54. You took the weakest of those and still gave him 54. I think the Holland was a much better signing, and you can at least see where he's going to plug and play into that defense. So, like I said, I feel bad for the Giants as a whole. I think they're going to have another terrible year. So,
Yusef, hold your ears if you're listening, man.
yeah, he'll get on me later. I'm prepared.
I'm sure he will. Yusef's our buddy and our Giants fan. Real quick, final thoughts, either final 60, something you had prepared, or just final thoughts on free agency. Shane, I'll start with you first, man.
On free agency, I think like we really hit up on this, a lot of money flying around for guys that are um, questionable on the amount of snaps they've played in the NFL. Are you a
Yeah,
full-time player? You've been able to show your numbers at that level, but maybe you had a lot of guys helping you. So I think this is a big show me year for those guys. Um, yeah, I mean, free agency has completely changed the way the NFL is in the last couple of years with the amount of money going around and the way that teams think about their off seasons.
absolutely. All that extra money does change, at least temporarily. We'll see if that keeps up, but at least for the last 2 seasons, it does change what some of these teams can do. Austin?
Yeah, it was a fun free agency period, but I want to talk about baseball a little bit. MLB had its first game, literally 6 a.m. this morning. If you're watching this before the game Wednesday, if you want to wake up early, 6 a.m. Eastern, I think, or 6:15, something like that, is first pitch. If you're up, might as well throw it on. It's a free game on MLB's like app, so if you download their app, I think you can watch it for free without, paying for like the subscription or anything like that. So catch a baseball game. They're playing in Tokyo and they have a really, really sick replay system. I encourage you, if you're not going to watch the
Oh, really?
games, at least go check out the replay system they have. It is awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't even know that. All right. So thank you, Austin, for the tidbit there. Baseball's here and I love it. So sign of summer and spring. All right. Everybody, thank you for watching. We packed a lot into this one episode. Next week we will slow back down and focus a little bit more on the Dallas Cowboys player grades and a 3 round mock. So everybody, thank you for being with us. Shane and Austin, thank you as always. Great work. That's a lot that goes into that. So thank you all as always. Have a great one. Everybody, goodbye.